It has its ups and downs.
Yeah, like what?
Like, I feel like you never stop working. And like, how do I explain it? I feel like you never stop working. For one, like I could get emails from work on the weekend, and even though I don't have to respond, or I could like develop certain types of boundaries, I always feel inclined to respond because it's there. It's like when you say, oh, I'm not gonna eat this piece of candy, but it's there, so you end up eating it anyway. I mean, or I'm gonna eat healthy, but then like you end up going out and you eat it anyway. So I feel like with working remotely, your work is wherever you are. Yeah. It's not like you leave your work at home. It's always with you at your phone, on your phone. People can call you anytime you want, and it's like you could not answer, but I feel like there are people who work at the office and they even answer on the weekends. So who am I, who is working from home, always on my phone, and I'm not gonna answer.
Yeah, so, but then how do you like? I feel like there still needs to be like a balance and like boundaries, you know.
I think that's true, and I am learning. It's only been about 5 months now since I started working remotely, and a lot of people are like, oh my God, I would love to have a remote job. And I'm like, you say that. And then you get the remote, and you get the remote job, and it's hard to establish those boundaries. It's really hard. And I think even for people who are seasoned, who've been doing it for years, it's a very challenging thing. I'm working at it. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody.
Yeah.
Like,
so like, what kind of boundaries are you putting in place?
I try and set work hours. So if someone messages me at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., 5 a.m., like y'all know I live in LA. You know I live in LA. You know Pacific time zone. So I try not to answer, and then I'll answer later. Yeah. Or I'll not take calls, or I won't respond to emails on the weekends, and I'll just leave it unless it's extremely urgent, because I do work with a government agency. So like not responding, I don't know what effect that could have with the company on like a global or national or company-wide level. I don't know what could happen. So I'm just trying to set certain boundaries. So the time zone, the working hours thing is what I try to do. And then setting certain meetings at certain times. But then another thing with working remotely is you think you're working 8 hours in a day. Often you're probably working more than that.
Probably, because you're at home.
You start your day probably 8 a.m. And then you have meetings in between, and then you actually do your work, and then somebody may schedule a late meeting and you still have to attend those meetings. So yeah, it has its ups and its downs.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me some pros and cons of working from home.
Pros, I get up whenever I feel like it.
Yeah.
Like I literally...
What's the latest?
Noon.
Oh, it's not that.
Noon, I probably went to sleep really late, and then I just woke up at noon, but then I go to sleep late again. I think that's the best thing. And then not having to wear business clothes. Not having to get dressed.
Yes.
Not having to get dressed has saved me so much money. That's another thing. Not having to drive anywhere. I don't have to drive anywhere.
And gas out here lately?
Gas in LA, I saw it was like $5, $4.97 in Hollywood. Oh. Yeah. But I would honestly say the pros are waking up whenever I want, not having to get dressed to go to work, not having to drive anywhere, not having to be in a toxic workspace, because if there's anything toxic that I feel could happen in a workplace, which a lot of times it does, because workplaces get very bureaucratic, I can completely like zone out. If I don't want to deal with it, I just end the phone call.
Yeah.
If I don't want to deal with it, I just won't answer the email.
Oh, so you just go boop, 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 boop.
Bye, go to lunch. I think that's a really good thing. Cons, I wouldn't recommend working remotely to anybody who suffers from depression.
Oh yeah, they gotta get out.
It can be very lonely. Luckily, I like to be by myself. And to kind of not get in like a depressive state of not having any type of social interaction, I work in coffee shops at least twice a week, so that I do talk to different people from different career fields or whatever. Talking on the phone isn't enough to really get the social interaction. It's not enough. So if somebody suffers from depression, I would absolutely not recommend working remotely. If someone suffers from any really mental health illness, I would work towards remote work very slowly.
Yeah.
Because it takes a certain type of person to be able to handle not having that much interaction, unless you go and look for it. But I was saying cons, so not having people around is really hard.
Yeah.
Not having a desk, which I probably should buy.
You'll get to it.
You know, not having dual screens, which I should probably also buy.
Do you need it?
I mean, it's really hard when you're just looking at one screen and you're working on a lot of stuff. It's very annoying.
Yeah,
So there's that. Another con. Wait, I have another pro. The other pro is being wherever I want when I want. So if I want to work in New York, I can work in New York. If I want to work in Florida, although I would never go to Florida, I will work in Florida. But those are the real cons. I think like not having social interaction, and like if you're the kind of person who needs hands-on training and you have to be there to learn, remote work is not for you, because you already have to know what you're doing and then you'll be a remote worker. So if you're not confident in whatever career you have, and you're like, I want to be remote because I want to travel and I want to be a millennial and I want to be a blogger. I want to be a blogger. I would not, it's not for you.
Yeah.
It's not for you, so.
So then, who would you recommend to be a remote worker?
If you are like an individual, you're very independent.
Yeah.
Not an individual, everybody's an individual. But if you're very independent, I would recommend it. If you're very confident in your work, I would recommend it. If you feel like you're reaching towards like the managerial level, where you can manage yourself as well as others without seeing them, I would do it. I would recommend it to anyone who's okay, who's self-directed.
Yeah.
And someone who like has the right personality to find social interaction when social interaction is not around them.